As the only rock we eat, salt has been a treasured commodity going back to the earliest civilizations. And while we don't trade it as currency anymore, most of us have enough affection for this elemental seasoning to be dangerous. And now the FDA has signals that it's looking for new ways to bring salt consumption in line, a shift that could change eating as we know it. Here's ABC's Lindsay Davis.
It gets crispy and then kind of cooks the inside afterwards.
Taste is what makes Chef Andrew Carmellini's roasted chicken the hottest selling item on the menu.
Flip it over and then
flip it over like this. To get that
over,
taste that has people flocking to his trendy downtown Manhattan restaurant La Conda Verde, he uses olive oil, a bit of lemon, and a very generous helping of salt.
if you don't have salt on there, it's going to be bland. And I don't want to go through life with bland food.
He even brines the chicken in salt and water for 45 minutes before roasting.
What the salt water does is it penetrates the cells of the meat and just kind of makes everything softer and juicier.
But now salt is under attack. The FDA is considering limiting the amount of salt that restaurants can use in food. All restaurants, from La Conda Verde all the way down to fast food joints. But Chef Carmellini finds that an outrage and says he's ready to fight it.
The FDA should crack down, not on my roast chicken.
He says you can't blame his roasted chicken for Americans eating too much salt.
We're going to put some salt and pepper on food to make it taste great. That's different than if you open up a plastic container, chips, and do a can of soup, or you do I don't know, a thing of popcorn that's processed already.
But this woman disagrees. Nutritionist Cynthia Sass says Americans are eating far too much sodium, often without even realizing it. The FDA recommends Americans eat only about 2/3 of a teaspoon of salt a day. That's 1,500 milligrams. In fact, the average American can easily eat twice the amount of salt that he or she should in one meal.
Pizza and wings, a football special.
4 slices from a medium pizza and 4 wings, almost 4,000 milligrams of sodium here.
A little grilled cheese, tomato soup, seems like it would be reasonably healthy.
This meal, over 2,700 milligrams.
Lasagna and a salad.
Yeah, this is a lot more than I think most people would think. Over 4,700 milligrams of sodium here.
Really, you're talking about what you should be consuming in 2 days in one meal.
About 2.5 days worth in one dinner.
And all that excess adds up.
Let's get a sense of how much sodium we would take in a year.
We're talking about 11 cups of salt is the equivalent of the sodium intake of the average American.
This is a lot of salt.
Enough to melt the ice on a large stretch of sidewalk.
The landmine of sodium is really the supermarket.
Sass says that's because 75% of our sodium intake comes from processed foods. But there are ways of limiting it. For example, look no further than the serving size on the back of your cans.
There's 2 servings in this can. So our sodium here, 470 milligrams for one serving.
Right.
If you have the whole thing, so now we're talking almost 1,000 out of that 1,500 for one meal.
And if you're having a salad with your soup, look closely before you douse it with store-bought dressing.
This is notoriously a high sodium item, just salad dressings in general. So if we turn this over, we look at the sodium, 300 milligrams. But then you have to make sure you look at that serving size, right? It's 2 tablespoons.
Which who's using 2 tablespoons of salad dressing?
Right, most of us use probably at least double that.
Also, don't be fooled by the labeling. Low, light, reduced sodium, each means something different.
Reduced sodium means it has 25% less than its original version. If it says low sodium on the label, it has to have less than 140 milligrams of sodium per serving.
Light typically means 50% less than the original, and no salt added means no additional salt to whatever's naturally in the product. One easy fix to lower your daily salt intake: learn to substitute. Like this plain bagel, it has 500 milligrams of sodium, and that's even before you put any butter or cream cheese on it.
This one bagel is really the equivalent of about 3 to 4 slices of bread.
Right.
So one thing that we can do is kind of use something that's a little bit less dense, like an English muffin, let's say.
200 milligrams.
So even if you only had half the bagel, you're still going to get more in the bagel than you would in the English muffin.
Wow.
And making those simple switches could mean 11 million fewer high blood pressure patients, an estimated 92,000 lives saved, along with about $24 billion in healthcare costs each year.
So it's eye damage, kidney damage. There are even some links to cancer. Lowering blood pressure effectively markedly reduces the risk of stroke and heart failure.
And if sodium levels in processed food are cut down, over time, he says we'd likely reduce our craving for salt.
Your taste buds get used to it, and the perception that if I decrease my salt, my food's going to taste awful is just untrue.
Watch. There you go. Rack it again.
All right. Don't try this at home.
What Chef Andrew Carmelini says you can try at home is cooking with fresh food and using some alternatives to salt like lemon juice, vinegar, and oregano.
This is the part of cooking that I'm best at, the sampling part.
Juicy and tender.
That's excellent. And you can taste the salt, but it's not too salty.
Having a great meal without any salt it's just kind of sad, really. It's impossible.
That's the opinion of a man who dedicates his life to the delicious. For the rest of us, it's a matter of taste and good health. For Nightline, I'm Lindsay Davis in New York.